So, welcome everyone. My name is Jennifer, and I work in meaningful innovation at Rickshaw Travel. And when I went to Thailand, I rode an elephant. Now, some of you are probably thinking, so what's the big deal? And some of you might be thinking, wow, that's really cool, I'd like to do that too. And others of you might be sitting there completely appalled. Why? Why would you be appalled? Well, you might have noticed that it's starting to gain traction now in the media that elephants used for riding, such as this one, particularly in Asia, have often undergone unspeakable cruelty in order to get them to obey humans. Elephants are herd animals and have never been domesticated in the way that dogs, cats, or horses have been. This means that in order to train an elephant, the baby elephants must be taken from their mothers and have their spirits broken by isolation, starvation, and beating. This is an animal that is now ranked alongside chimps and dolphins in terms of intelligence. And as tourists, we're not just encouraging this practice, we're actually fueling it. Riding elephants is not part of Thai culture. It has developed specifically in response to tourist demand and is causing a predicted 100 elephants a year to be poached, specifically for tourism. So you might be wondering, why did I do it? Why did I choose to ride an elephant? Quite simply, because I didn't know. I had no idea that that was involved, and I really loved elephants, and I wanted to get close to them. And undeniably, I did. I did get close to it. But was it meaningful? And what do I mean by that? Was it meaningful? What am I talking about? I'm talking about experiences where everybody benefits, where everybody gets something out of it, where you or I, as travelers, can get a unique insight into a completely different culture, come face to face with people who have totally different perspectives on the world, where you learn something new and are immersed in local communities, while at the same time helping to preserve and allow those communities to flourish. Where you or I, as a traveller, can spot amazing wildlife that we'd never be able to see over here in the UK, where we can surround ourselves in some of the world's most stunning landscapes, where we can be wowed, awestruck, perhaps even inspired by them, and at the same time help to keep them that way. Experiences where everybody involved gets something positive out of it. So what did I get out of riding the elephant? I could tick it off my list. That's honestly about it. I didn't feel like I learned anything or understood elephants any better. I was just sat on top, we walked around for a little bit, I got off, and that was it. What did the elephant get out of it? Well, she was being controlled by the mahout, which you can see here, and he has a hook on a stick, which he uses to control her. So she had a hook poked into her head repeatedly. Unlike horses and camels, elephants' spines are quite weak, and so they're not very well equipped to deal with heavy loads, or even people. She therefore also got a damaged spine from carrying around this heavy chair all day, until the evening when she was chained up with no company or entertainment. So what did the local people get out of it? The mahout, for example. Well, the majority of mahouts live on site at elephant camps in pretty appalling conditions. They are paid incredibly low salaries, and much of what they make is spent on keeping the elephants just well enough to carry tourists around all day. They are essentially trapped into a cycle of poverty. So yeah, he didn't get very much out of it either. And these are not the only issues that all of us, as well-meaning travellers trying to expand our horizons, can unwittingly contribute to. Primates, for example. How many of us here would love to go and see the mountain gorillas, or perhaps even cuddle a baby orangutan? Well, unfortunately, we're actually genetically very similar to primates, which means we only have to be within 15 metres of them in order to spread on a disease and potentially wipe out an entire species. There have been documented cases of tourists passing diseases to primates and very nearly doing just that. This happens not because we don't care, but because we don't know. Because we're very much focusing on what we're getting out of the interaction and forgetting about the animals. And animals, of course, are not the only ones who fall victim to the negative impacts of tourism. The industry, by its very nature, often involves people who are relatively wealthy in a global sense interacting with people who are relatively poor. And unfortunately, this is a formula that can all too frequently lead to exploitation. Many destinations have very lax laws and regulations compared to Europe around workers' rights, with a lot of the higher paying jobs and responsibilities in tourism being given to foreigners rather than natives. Trekking porters, in particular, are a very vulnerable group, required to carry heavy loads such as these that we would never dream of. They operate in some of the world's harshest climates, often with inadequate clothing and equipment. They are subject to frostbite, permanent injury, and sometimes even death. Again, this happens not when we don't care, but when we forget to think about what their needs are as well as our own. Women and children, too, are often cruelly exploited, not just by the infamous sex tourism industry, which unfortunately we've all heard of, but what might surprise you is also by orphanages. Many of us would be willing, perhaps even desperate, to go and volunteer in an orphanage in some far-flung destination, thinking that we're helping needy children. But sadly, this is often not the case. Nepal, for example, has over 800 orphanages. That's a lot of orphans for a small country. It may not surprise you that 80% of those are in the tourist hotspots. So what's going on here? Sadly, most of those orphanages are fake. What I mean is, most of those children are not actually orphans. They have been deceived or sometimes even stolen from their parents in order to fuel the tourist demand for volunteering at an orphanage. This has happened because we, as wealthier Westerners, wanted to help because we really do care. But again, we forgot to think about their needs, to think about the bigger picture. Many of us here would think nothing of going over to Nepal for a week and volunteering in an orphanage with needy children. But we would never be allowed to do that here in the UK, and there's probably a good reason for it. A very visible way that irresponsible tourism can be so damaging is when development goes ahead uncontrolled, hugely impacting the environment. There are some parts of Mui Ne in Vietnam which are almost unrecognizable compared to 10 years ago, because you can barely see between the concrete. But a less visible impact is around water equity. In many parts of the world, tourism's demand for water has resulted in appropriation of water supplies to the detriment of local domestic and agricultural needs. A very good example of this is on the Indonesian island of Bali. While the island's popular golf courses use 3 million litres of water every day, some of the locals on the island have to walk up to 3 kilometres to collect water from a well. These issues are not simple, though. The relationship is incredibly complex, and there are many different parties at fault. An example of this is the so-called Long Neck tribe in Thailand. Indigenous people and tribal communities in particular are especially vulnerable to exploitation, and this is a tribe that is at the heart of a very complex problem. You may well have heard of this tribe, whose women place rings on their necks to extend them by pressing on the collarbone. Whether you believe this traditional practice is okay or not, is somewhat by the by. But what we do know is that the practice was starting to just about die out until tourists began to show an interest in them. The volume of visitors to these remote villages in rural Thailand rose rapidly, with tourist dollars becoming their primary source of income above anything else. The use of the metal rings began to flourish again, despite already having lost much of its cultural significance. A typical visit would involve a walk around the village, maybe looking at some handicrafts, and of course, plenty of photos. It was very much all about looking. So criticisms began to appear in the media, accusing these tours of being a human zoo. And in some ways, they weren't wrong. There was no cultural exchange and no real interaction. So the tourist numbers began to decline. And as travellers no longer wanted to be associated with the human zoo, the tribe therefore began to lose their primary source of income. As a minority group in Thailand, they actually have very few rights. The majority of them do not speak the local language and are illiterate. And many are not permitted to leave the area of their village. They are now stuck. Stuck because we forgot to think about what they would get out of the interaction. we forgot to empower them to ensure that they were agents in their own destiny and had a say in what was happening. Instead, we were focusing on our desire to see a remote and exotic tribe. So now that I've thoroughly depressed you all, I'm going to try and bring you back up again and to reassure you that it does not have to be this way. It is very much our belief at Rickshaw, and my own personal belief, that travelling with meaning in a meaningful way can be an incredible force for good. So let's go back to the primates. As I mentioned, getting close to them can spread disease, but academics studying them believe that mountain gorillas would be extinct if it were not for tourism. Why? Tourists pay through the nose to see these amazing creatures, and that is far more lucrative business to the local people than the bushmeat trade. This helps the local people put it into their interest to preserve the animals rather than hunting them. I also talked in depth about elephants. So what should we do? Should we boycott all elephant interactions and experiences? It's not really that simple, unfortunately. A sudden or total boycott would result in hundreds of animals being abandoned and possibly even killed, because many simply cannot be rehabilitated now. Without a lucrative income, their owners have no use for them. They can no longer afford to keep them. So a better solution is to find experiences that are going to be beneficial, that are going to be meaningful. At Rickshaw, we offer an experience at the Elephant Nature Park in Thailand. This park prides itself on its ethical treatment of the elephants in its care, and needless to say, they have a no-riding policy. So how is it meaningful? What will you get out of it? The park provides education to visitors and tourists alike about its elephants, helping you connect with each one's unique and individual story. So unlike the elephant ride that I did, you'll learn something new and create a closer, more meaningful connection with the animals because you'll understand them so much better. So what do the elephants get out of it? Well, the park aids the rehabilitation of the elephants wherever they can, but those who are permanent residents are encouraged to live in a herd, more similar to how they would live in the wild. And this way, they can really enjoy their retirement. But what about the local community? They can get employment at the park in positions which pay a much fairer wage. And the park is Thai-owned and Thai-run. So the decisions that are made come from a grassroots level and are sensitive to Thai culture. So I mentioned earlier that irresponsible tourism can also lead to the destruction of the environment. Well, meaningful travel can actually preserve it. At Rickshaw, we offer a trip deep into the Sumatran jungle in Indonesia. So how is that meaningful? What do the local people get out of it? Well, they were concerned about illegal logging in the area, which they could clearly see was destroying the jungle and the unique animals that lived there. They grouped together to create experiences here that travelers could enjoy and bring them in. Many of the illegal loggers were just local people who were trying to supplement their income on their agricultural farms and were being exploited by the logging companies. They were approached and educated on what was happening, and many soon saw that they could make a lot more money out of retraining as guides than they could from the illegal logging. Many are now active conservationists and have a much healthier income to boot. It's been a success for the local community because they've been involved in the decision-making. So what has the environment got out of it? This area was once the heart of illegal logging in Sumatra, and now it sees next to none. The jungle is flourishing again, and the critically endangered Sumatran orangutan has recently been spotted in the area. But what will you get out of it as the traveller there? You'll stay in one of the world's most remote jungles with lush tropical vegetation and amazing animals unlike anywhere else. And if you're really lucky, you might even spot that Sumatran orangutan, from a safe distance, of course. Meaningful travel can do even more for people, though. It can also build cultural bridges whilst bringing much needed funds into the area. We've all heard that cliche, travel broadens the mind. But you cannot deny that direct interaction with different people from different walks of life builds tolerance and understanding. At Rickshaw, we have plenty of opportunities to do this. One I tried myself, which you can see here, is a local stay on a farm in Peru, where you also get to help out with the daily activities. So how is this meaningful? What did my hosts get out of it? The funds that Josefina and Oswaldo received from my stay supplemented their existing income from the farm. This meant that they weren't reliant on tourism. They didn't become dependent on it. They also had a sense of pride in being able to show me their way of life. And I'm pretty sure that they got a few laughs out of watching my pathetic attempts to try and milk a cow. And what did I get out of it? Well, despite not speaking any Spanish, and my host not speaking very much English, I was able to interact with them directly. I took along a trusty phrase book, and there was plenty of gesticulating. And through that, I was able to share with them my life in the UK, and they were able to share with me what their life was like on the farm. I learned so much more and had a much better understanding than had I just walked around their village and looked at a few handicrafts. And I learned how to milk a cow really badly. Through Rickshaw, I also had the opportunity to cook a traditional Sri Lankan curry in the home of a local woman. So how is this meaningful? What did I get out of it? Well, just like the Peruvian family, I had a unique insight into her way of life. Being a huge curry fan, I was also able to add a brand new and truly authentic recipe into my repertoire, and it's now become my go-to dish whenever I have friends and family around. So what did she get out of it? Well, tourism is somewhat unique in the sense that it gives women as well as men all over the world opportunities to work and manage their own finances. In this way, she was empowered and in control of the extra money that was being put into her pocket. She was also very much in charge of my performance in the kitchen, which gave our relationship a more equal footing than if I'd just been served a meal that she'd made. I mentioned earlier about indigenous communities, that they're particularly vulnerable to exploitation and cultural commodification. But at Rickshaw, we offer a trip to stay with the indigenous Kuna people in Panama. So how is it meaningful? What do the Kuna get out of it? Because the Kuna own and run most of the lodges, because the guides are from the community, they see much of the income from travellers. They can maintain their traditional way of life and feel a sense of pride as they show it off to visitors completely on their terms. What will you get out of it? Well, apart from staying and understanding a remote and unique community who up until the late 1990s were using coconuts as currency, you'll also be staying here. I don't know about you, but I'd rather be there right now. So what all of these experiences have in common is that everybody benefits. You or I, as travellers, gain a unique insight into a completely different way of life, learn new things, see amazing animals and incredible landscapes. And the local people have a say in that interaction. They have some form of control over what happens and are agents in their own destiny. The experience is on an equal footing because it's just as much on their terms as it is on ours. Okay, so how do you make sure that you're in the camp that's making people's lives better? How do you make sure that you're part of the solution and not part of the problem? It's our belief at Rickshaw that tour operators do have a responsibility to do the right thing wherever they can. So here are some things that you can check with them before you book. The first one is to check whether or not they have a sustainability policy or a responsible travel policy or something similar. Most tour operators will be more than happy to show it off because it takes a long time to put together. The second is if they have listed any accreditation schemes, just check up on those schemes. Check that they are real schemes and that that company is definitely listed. Number 3 is a bit of general advice to avoid companies that have lots and lots of pictures of tourists touching or feeding wildlife, especially primates. If you do want to have an animal experience, it's good to check as well what kind of educational element is included in that experience. Number 4 is that if a trip claims to help the local environment, if it helps to conserve it, some kind of conservation claims, then it's a good idea to check whether or not the local community is involved in that. Conservation only really works if the local people benefit from it. And finally, number 5 is to go local. Check whether your accommodation is locally owned. Are the guides from the local community? This way you can help make sure that money goes directly to local people and not international chains. But there are also things which are ultimately down to each and every one of us as individuals. And that's how we behave when we get there and what we do. So number 1 is to buy local. The money that you spend in the destination is free from tariffs, so it's a great way to inject money directly where it's needed if you buy from local shops and eat at local restaurants. It's also a fantastic way to immerse yourself in the local community. When I was in South India, I was the only Westerner in a little dosa restaurant. And I remember that they came over and gave me this enormous masala dosa. I had no idea where to start or how to tackle it. But then the family sitting next to me gave me a hand and helped me out. We had a lot of fun, and it was a really great unplanned moment. Number 2 is get clued up. Familiarize yourself with the local culture, customs, and dress code. Don't forget that you're representing your country while you're in theirs, so it's a good idea to try not to cause offense. You'll also feel more like you're part of it. When you go to a Buddhist temple and you take your shoes off, you have a small connection with the local people as they stand by you and do the same. Number 3 is watch your resource use. Remote destinations in particular have very limited supplies of electricity and water. Do you really need that towel washing again? Number 4 is take your waste with you. There are so many amazing locations all over the world, and together we can keep them that way. You can take a litter with you, leave plants and rocks where they are, and set a good example to locals and travellers alike. We'd all hate to be that traveller that accidentally burnt down half a national park in Chile by being careless with a cigarette. And number 5, and perhaps in some ways the most important, is just enjoy it. By far the best way to travel is to really throw yourself into the destination, talk to local people, explore, ask questions, be curious, and just try new things. You may never develop a taste for that deep-fried Cambodian tarantula, but it's sure to make a great story. So I could waffle on forever, but I'm aware that Michael Palin is talking at 4 o'clock, and we might all want to go and see him. So I'd just like to leave you with a few final thoughts to think about. It's predicted that there will be 1.8 billion international tourist arrivals by 2030, and that doesn't include domestic tourism. That's over 1/5 of the global population travelling to another country. Tourism is the primary foreign exchange earner for 65 out of 69 of the world's less economically developed countries. That means it touches some of the world's poorest people. Imagine if all tourism was meaningful, if everyone travelled with meaning. What kind of difference would that make to us as travellers, to the local people, to the plants, to the animals? Yes, it's our holiday. Some of us have worked long hours in stressful jobs so that we can have a holiday. Of course, we want to have a good time when we get there. But let's not forget that this is their home. How would you normally behave in somebody else's home? Let's make sure that our once-in-a-lifetime adventure is not at their expense. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you very much for listening.